Hello and welcome again to Garden Wise Adventures. Today we're going to do another in my video series of landscape design. And today we're going to talk about planning your design around maintenance. Now, why is this important? Maintenance isn't usually the first thing you're thinking of when you're doing landscape design, but it's the thing that's going to carry you through the rest of the years that you have your landscape. So, what kind of things do you need to think about? Let's look around my yard and talk about that. Now, as we look at my yard, let's talk about some of the maintenance projects you need to think about. Now, we see I have lawn. As we've discussed in the past, I'll probably get rid of the lawn in the front. But what kind of maintenance goes with lawns? There's, of course, watering and sprinkler repair. There's mowing and edging, which is not my favorite. There is fertilizing and weed control, disease control and insect control. Now, some people like that kind of maintenance, and you've got to think about how you feel about that kind of maintenance and plan accordingly. What about shrubs? For example, I have this little tiny little devil. Well, it's not little tiny. It's between 4 and 5 feet tall and wide, and this is as big as it's going to get. And the area that I put it in exactly fits its dimensions. So this plant is zero maintenance for me. I do not prune it. Maybe someday I'll need to prune it a little bit, but it's not something that I do even once a year. So choose shrubs that don't need to be pruned to fit the area you have them in. Grasses. I have not cut my grasses back yet because I like to leave them up for the winter. Grasses are very low maintenance. You cut them back one time a year. Here I have my irises. Irises are a little bit higher maintenance. I cut them back 2 to 3 times a year. In very early spring, I take any dead out. After the flowers bloom, I cut back the flowers. And then in the fall, I cut the leaves back to this height. So they do take a bit more maintenance, but it's not a ton. I have my annual plants. These are snapdragons. I'm going to leave them up until spring and then I'm going to cut them back. These are some of the lowest maintenance semi-annual plants that I know of. These self-seed. If you put them in a protected spot, they'll survive the winter, and you really don't need to worry about deadheading them too often. I deadhead them about twice a year. You can see I've cut back my catmint. Catmint is a perennial that I've got to think about with maintenance. It does need to be cut back twice a year. Once at the end of the year to the size that you see right now, and once mid-season after its first flush of bloom to keep it looking really good. So that is another actual low maintenance plan. Twice a year is not too bad. There are evergreens. Evergreens like the spruce that are zero maintenance. I have trees like my weeping cherry. This weeping cherry gets pruned once a year. I just take out, the crossing branches and any branches that are just going where I don't want them. And that's low maintenance. Grasses like my Mexican feathergrass are also low maintenance. So when you choose annuals and perennials, if you don't like the idea of a lot of maintenance, choose annuals and perennials that only need to be cut back once or twice a year. Now, more maintenance that you've got to think about. Lawns need mowing, but large open areas need to be mulched. And the reason you mulch them is to retain moisture and to cut back on weeds. Now, mulch is, it only needs to be done once every couple of years or so. But it's a huge job, and it can be quite expensive depending on whether you do it yourself, where you get your mulch, what kind of mulch you use, or if you have somebody do it for you. I actually had a client once who, on one mulch job, he spent $7,500. It was a very large property and he didn't have any mulch on it. It was the first time we put mulch on it. And honestly, I underbid that project. So mulch can be very expensive. You can also go a less expensive route by doing it yourself and doing chip drop. Chip drop is, I'll put a link down below for their website. But you can sign up for any of the arborists that are out cutting down trees to drop the chips off at your property. It's not guaranteed what you're going to get or when you're going to get it, but it's a cheaper alternative to paying somebody else for mulch. Garden beds. What kind of maintenance do garden beds have? You've got to think about weeding. You've got to think about adding compost to them, switching out plants when plants are finished, cutting them back and cleaning them out, before the winter hits or in the spring. So garden beds can be quite a bit of maintenance. You can plan wilder areas like my hillside. I go up there once, maybe twice a year, and remove fallen sticks and anything that has started growing into areas that I don't want it. You can have it be as wild as you like or as clean as you would like. It just depends on the amount of time you want to spend on maintenance. So what other kinds of maintenance do you need to think about when it comes to garden design? You need to think about your structures and the materials that you use. As you can see here, my deck is made out of wood and Trex. It's not beautiful, it's not the best, but it's very functional. We've got our railing. These kind of things need maintenance. I have not done the maintenance that needs to be done on these. They need to be sanded and painted to protect them from the weather, or I'm going to have worse problems further down the line. Trex, however, does not need to be stained and painted. So when you plan your structures, think about the type of maintenance that they will require and plan accordingly with the materials that you choose. Another thing you noticed when you looked at my garden beds, they're not made out of wood, they're made out of blocks. It was much more expensive to put in the beginning, but it's been probably 12 years, 13 years since they've been put in, and I have not had to do any maintenance on them at all, and I will not have to replace them. So that saves money in the long run. So you've got to look at that with maintenance. Do you want to save money in the long run? Use a more expensive material that's going to degrade slower. If you want to save money in the short run and are willing to spend money later on down the road, you can use cheaper materials that do degrade faster. So I challenge you to go out and look at your property and think about the design that you're coming up with, and think about it according to the maintenance aspect. How much time are you willing to spend each week? How much time are you willing to spend in the year to do maintenance? How much money are you going to spend? Are you going to have somebody else do the maintenance? Are you going to do it on your own? Another thing to think about is, as you get older, are you going to be able to scale it back so that you don't have to work as hard in the landscape, or are you going to want to work harder in your landscape as you get older? In my experience, most people as they get older have other things they would like to do, so think about that. So if you've enjoyed this video, I will link a playlist of design videos up here. There'll be other videos you can watch down here, and if you want to subscribe, there's a subscribe button over here. So go enjoy yourself and have a wonderful garden adventure.